Rogeri Baconis Speculum Alchemy, Roger Bacon, The Mirror of Alchemy, Low, Biographical Notice on Roger Bacon. Roger Bacon was born in 1214 in Ilcester, County of Somerset. He did his first studies at Oxford, and then came to Paris to take the titles of Master of Arts and Doctor of Theology. At that time, Albert the Great professed publicly in Paris. Back in England, he entered the Franciscan order around 1240. He learned Greek, Arabic, Hebrew to read the ancient authors in the text. He thus acquired a prodigious erudition. He returned to Paris, which offered him more facilities for his studies. His ignorant superiors, afraid of his science, began to persecute him. Clement IV, who admired him, was powerless to protect him, and Bacon had to hiding from his superiors to write and send to the Pope the Opus Majus. Nicholas III succeeded Clement IV. It was under this pontiff that Jeremy Discloses, general of the Franciscans, passing through Paris, had Roger Bacon locked up, accusing him of magic and heresy. Jerome Discloses was himself elected pope under the name of Nicholas IV, and Roger Bacon despaired of ever getting out of his dungeon when Raymond Goffredi was named general of the Franciscans. A gentle and learned man, Raymond set Roger Bacon and several other Franciscans free. Bacon returned to England, but he had suffered too much. He was too old to resume his cherished studies. He died at Oxford 00 Zerominus 1294. On his deathbed, he let fall these sad words: "I repent of having given so much trouble in the interest of science. The works of R.Bacon relating to alchemy have been brought together in a collection entitled Rogeri Baconis Soris Chemius UN Val, in Minus 8, Francofurti 1603 and 1620. List of treatises by Roger Bacon. Alchemia Major, Brepiadium de Dono Dei, de Leon Piridi, Secrium Secriorum, Speculum Alchemis, Episiola de Secrolius Superbus Artis Natures AC Nolitele Magic. This treatise that you read now can be found in Latin in the Bibliotheca Chemica Mangetti, in the Thesaurus Chemicus, in Volume 2, the Theatrum Chemicum. It is from this text that the present translation was made. It is a treatise on speculative or theoretical alchemy, a small treatise of alchemy by Roger Bacon entitled Mirror of Alchemy, Preface. In their writings, the philosophers express themselves from many different ways, but always enigmatic. They bequeath to us a noble science among all, but veiled completely from us by their word cloudy, completely hidden under an impenetrable veil, and yet they were right to do so. Also, I conjure you to exercise your mind with perseverance on these 7 chapters, which contain the art of transmuting metals, without having to worry about the writings of other philosophers. Iron often in your spirit their beginning, their middle, their end, and you there find inventions so subtle that your soul will be filled with joy. Chapter 9, Definitions of Alchemy. In some ancient manuscripts, we find several definitions of this art, which it is important to discuss here. Hermes says, alchemy is the immutable science which works on bodies with the aid of theory and experience, and which, by a natural conjunction, transforms them into a more valuable superior species. Another philosopher said, alchemy teaches to transmute any species of metal into another, that with the aid of a particular medicine, as can be seen from the numerous writings of the philosophers. This is why I say, alchemy is the science which teaches how to prepare a certain medicine or elixir, which being projected on imperfect metals, gives them perfection in the very moment of projection. Chapter 2, Natural Principles and the Generation of Metals. I will speak here of the natural principles and the generation of metals. First, note that the principles of metals are mercury and sulfur. These 2 principles have given rise to all metals and all minerals, of which there are, however, a large number of different species. I say further that nature has always had as its aim and ceaselessly strives to arrive at perfection, at gold. But as a result of various accidents which hinder its progress, the metallic varieties are born, as is clearly stated in several philosophers. According to the purity or the impurity of the 2 component principles, that is to say sulfur and mercury, there are produced perfect or imperfect metals: gold, silver, tin, lead, copper, iron. Now, piously collect these teachings on the nature of metals, on their purity or their impurity, their poverty or their richness in principle. Nature of gold. Gold is a perfect body composed of a pure, fixed, brilliant, red mercury and of a sulfur-pure, fixed red, non-combustible. Gold is perfect. Nature of silver. It is a pure, almost perfect body composed of a pure, almost fixed, brilliant white mercury. Its sulfur has the same qualities. There is no lack of silver, only a little more fixity, color, and weight. Nature of the pewter. It is a pure, imperfect body, composed of a pure mercury, fixed and volatile, brilliant, white on the outside, red on the inside. Its sulfur has the same quality. The tin only lacks to be a little more cooked and digested. Nature of lead, it is an impure and imperfect body, composed of an impure, unstable, terrestrial, powdery mercury, slightly white on the outside, red on the inside. His smile is similar and more combustible. Lead lacks purity, fixity, color. He is not cooked enough. Nature of copper, copper is an impure and imperfect metal, composed of an impure, unstable, terrestrial, combustible, red, lusterless mercury. The same applies to its sulfur. Copper lacks fixity, purity, weight. It contains too much impure color and incombustible earthy parts. Nature of iron. Iron is an impure, imperfect substance, composed of an impure mercury, too fixed, containing combustible earthy parts, white and red, but without glow. It lacks fusibility, purity, weight. It contains too much impure fixed sulfur and combustible earthy parts. Any alchemist must take into account the above. Chapter 3rd, from which one must withdraw the next matter of. The elixir. In what precedes, we have sufficiently determined the genesis of perfect and imperfect metals. Now, we will work to make imperfect matter pure and perfect. It appears from the chapter's precedents that all metals are composed of mercury and sulfur, that the impurity and imperfection of components is found in the compound. As we can add to metals only substances drawn from themselves, it follows that no foreign matter can serve us, but that whatever is composed of two principles suffices to perfect and even to transmute the metals. It is very surprising to see people, however skillful, to work on animals which constitute a very remote matter, whereas they have at hand a sufficiently close matter in minerals. It is not impossible that a philosopher place the work in these remote matters, but it is by allegory that he will have done it. Two principles make up all metals, and nothing can attach itself, unite with metals, or transform them, if it is itself composed of the two principles. It is as reasoning forces us to take for matter of our stone, mercury, and sulfur. Mercury alone. Sulfur alone cannot engender metals, but by their union, they give birth to various metals and to numerous minerals. So it is obvious that our stone must be born from these two principles. Our last secret is very precious and very hidden. On what mineral matter, next among all, should we operate directly? We are forced to choose carefully. Suppose first that we derive our matter of plants, grasses, trees, and all that arises from the earth. It will be necessary to extract the mercury and the sulfur by a long cooking, operations that we let us push back, since nature offers us ready-made mercury and sulfur. If we had elected animals, we would have to work on human blood, hair, urine, excrement, chicken eggs, finally all that can be obtained from animals. There again, we would have to extract mercury and sulfur by cooking. We reject these operations for our first reason. If we had chosen mixed minerals, such as the various species of magnesia, marcasites, treatise, rosacea, or vitriols, alums, borax, salts, etc., it would even be necessary to extract mercury and sulfur from it by cooking, which we reject for the same reasons as above. If we choose one of the seven spirits as mercury alone, or sulfur alone, or else mercury in one of the two sulfurs, either quicksulfur or orpiment, or yellow arsenic or red arsenic, we do not could perfect them, because nature does not only perfect the determined mixture of the two principles. We can't do better than nature, and we would have to extract from these bodies the sulfur and the mercury, what we repel as above. Finally, if we took the two principles themselves, we would have to mix them in some unchangeable proportion, unknown to the human mind, and then cook them until they were coagulated into a mixture. Solid mass. This is why we reject the idea of taking the two separate principles, that is to say, sulfur and mercury, because we do not know their proportion, and that we shall find bodies in which the two principles are united in right proportions, coagulated and conjoined according to the rules. Hide the secret well. Gold is a perfect and male body without superfluity or poverty. If he perfected the imperfect metals melted with him, it would be the red elixir. Money, too, is an almost perfect and female body, and if by simple fusion it made imperfect metals almost perfect, it would be the white elixir. What is not and what cannot be, because these bodies are perfect to a single degree. If their perfection were communicable to imperfect metals, the latter would not be perfected, and they would be the perfect metals, which would be defiled by contact with the imperfect. But if they were more than perfect, double, quadruple, hundredfold, etc., they could then perfect the imperfect. Nature always operates simply. That is why perfection is simple in them, indivisible, and not transferable. They could not enter into the composition of the stone as ferments to shorten the work. They would in fact be reduced to their elements, the sum of the volatile exceeding the sum of the fixed. And because gold is a perfect body composed of a brilliant red mercury and a similar sulfur, we shall not take it as the material of the stone for the red elixir, because it is too simply perfect. Without subtle perfection, it is overcooked and naturally digested, and we can barely work it with our artificial fire. The same for money. When nature perfects something, it does not know how to purify it, perfect it intimately, because it operates with simplicity. If we choose gold and silver, we could hardly find a fire able to act on them. Although we know this fire, we cannot, however, arrive at the perfect purification because of the power of their bonds and their natural harmony. Also push back the gold for the red elixir, the silver for the white elixir. We would find a certain body composed of mercury and sufficiently pure sulfur, on which nature will have worked little. We pride ourselves on perfecting such a body with our artificial fire and knowledge of the art. We will subject it to suitable cooking, purifying it, coloring it, and fixing it according to the rules of the art. Must therefore choose a matter which contains a pure, clear white and red mercury, not completely perfect, mixed equally, in the desired proportions and according to the rules, with a sulfur similar to it. This material must be coagulated into a solid mass, and such that with the aid of our science and our prudence, we can arrive at to purify it intimately, to perfect it with our fire, and to make it such that at the end of the work it is 1,000 times purer and more perfect than ordinary bodies cooked by natural heat. So be careful, for if you have exercised subtlety and sharpness of your mind on those chapters where I manifestly reveal to you the knowledge of matter, you now possess this thing, ineffable and delectable, object of all the desires of the philosophers. Chapter 4th of the manner of regulating the fire and of maintaining it. If your head is not too hard, if your mind is not enveloped completely in the veil of ignorance and intelligence, I can believe that in the preceding chapters you have found the true matter of the philosophers, matter of the blessed stone of the wise, on which alchemy will operate in order to perfect imperfect bodies with more than perfect bodies. Nature only offering us perfect or imperfect bodies, it is necessary for us to make it indefinitely perfect by our work, the matter named above. If we do not know how to operate, what is the cause, if not that we do not observe how nature perfects metals every day? Do we not see that in the mines the coarse elements cook and thicken so well? By the constant heat existing in the mountains, that with time it is transformed into mercury, that the same heat, the same cooking transforms the fatty parts of the earth in sulfur, that this heat applied for a long time to these two principles engenders, according to their purity or their impurity, all the metals? Do we not see that nature produces and perfects all metals by cooking alone? O infinite madness, who therefore, I ask you, who therefore obliges you to want to do the same thing with the help of bizarre and fantastic diets? This is why a philosopher said, woe to you who want to surpass nature and make metals more than perfected by a new diet, the fruit of your insane stubbornness. God gave nature immutable laws, that is to say, it must act by continuous cooking, and you fools, you despise her or you don't know restrict. He says likewise, fire and azoth must suffice. And elsewhere, heat perfects everything. And elsewhere, you have to bake, anneal, and not get away with it. Tired? And in different passages, let your fire be calm and gentle. May it continue thus every day, always uniform, without weakening, otherwise a great pity. Be patient and persistent. Crushed 7 times. Know that all our magisterium is made of one thing, the stone, in one way by cooking and in one vessel. Crushed fire. The work is similar to the creation of man. In childhood we feed him light foods, then when his bones have strengthened, the food becomes more fortifying. Likewise, our magisterium is first subjected to a light fire with which must always be acted upon during cooking. But although we constantly speak of moderate fire, we let us nevertheless imply that in the regime of the work must be increased little by little and by degrees until the fury. Chapter 5th of the vessel and the furnace. We have just determined the way of operating. We are now going to speak of the vessel and the furnace, to say how and with what they must be made. When nature cooks the metals in the mines with the help of natural fire, she cannot only be achieved by using a vessel suitable for cooking. We propose to imitate nature in the regime of fire, so let's imitate her also for the ship. Let's examine the place where metal. We see first, obviously in a mine, that under the mountain there has fire, produced sant and equal heat, the nature of which is to rise without cease. As it rises, it dries up and coagulates the thick water and coarse, contained in the bowels of the earth and transforms it into mercury. The unctuous mineral parts of the earth are baked, collected in the veins of the earth and flowing through the mountain, they engender sulfur. As can be observed in the veins of the mines, the sulfur born from the unctuous parts of the earth meets the mercury. Then the coagulation of the metallic water takes place. The heat continuing to act in the mountain, the various metals appear after a time very long. One observes in the mines a temperature constant. We can conclude that the mountain which contains mines is perfectly closed off from all sides by rocks, for if heat could escape, metals would never be born. If therefore we want to imitate nature, it is absolutely necessary that we have a stove similar to a mine, not by its greatness, but by a disposition particular, such that the fire placed in the bottom does not find no way out to escape when it rises, so that the heat is reverberated on the vase, carefully closed, which contains the matter of the stone. The vessel should be round, with a small neck. It must be of glass or earth as resistant as glass. Close the orifice hermetically with a cover and bitumen. In the mines, the fire is not in immediate contact with the matter of sulfur and mercury. This is separated from it by the land of the mountain. Likewise, the fire should not be applied to the naked vessel that contains matter, but this vessel must be placed in another closed vessel with as much care as him, so that equal heat acts on matter, above, below, wherever he will be necessary. This is why Aristotle says, in the Lights, that the mercury must be cooked in a triple vessel of very hard glass, or, what is better, of earth, possessing the hardness of glass. Chapter 6, Accidental and Essential Colors that appear during the work. Having elected the matter of stone, you also know the certain way to operate. You know with the help of which mode the various colors are made to appear by firing the stone. A philosopher said, so many colors, so many names. For each new color appearing in the work, the alchemists invented a different name. So in the first operation of our pierre, we gave the name of putrefaction, because our pierre is then black. When you have found the blackness, says another philosopher, know that in this blackness hides the whiteness, and it must be extracted from it. After the putrefaction, the stone reddens, and we have said on that, often the stone reddens, yellows and liquefies, then coagulates before true whiteness. She dissolves, putrefies, coagulates, mortifies, vivifies, blackens, whitens, adorns itself with red and white, everything this by itself. It can also turn green, because a philosopher said, cook until a green child appears, it is the soul of the stone. Another said, know that it is the soul that dominates during the greenness. It also appears before the whiteness, the colors of the peacock. A philosopher speaks of it in these terms. Know that all the colors that exist in the universe or that one can imagine appear before the whiteness. Only then comes true whiteness. The body will be cooked until it becomes shiny like the eye's fish, and then the stone will coagulate at the circumference. When you see the whiteness appearing on the surface in the vessel, says a wise man, be certain that under this whiteness hides the red. You have to extract it, cook until everything is red. There finally has between red and white a certain ashy color, of which it was said, after whiteness, you cannot make more mistakes, because by increasing the fire you will arrive at a grayish color. Do not despise the ashes, says a philosopher, for with the help of God it will liquefy. Finally appears the king crowned with the diadem red, if God permits. Chapter 7, How to Make Projection on Metals Imperfect. As I had promised, I treated until the end our great work, Blessed Magisterium, preparation of the white and red elixirs. Now let's talk about the way of making the projection complement of the work eagerly awaited and desired. The red elixir turns yellow to infinity and transforms all metals into pure gold. The white elixir whitens infinitely and gives metals the perfect whiteness. But you should know that there are metals further than others from perfection, and conversely there are some which are nearer. Although all the metals are equally brought to perfection by the elixir, those which are next become perfect more quickly, more completely, more intimately than the others. When we have found the closest metal, we will discard all the others. I have already said what are the near and distant metals, and which is closer to perfection. If you are wise and intelligent enough, you will find it in a preceding chapter indicated without detour, determined with certainty. There is no doubt that he who has exercised his mind on this mirror will find by his work the true matter, and will know on which body it is advisable to make the projection of the elixir to arrive at perfection. Our precursors, who found everything in this art by their philosophy alone, show us enough and without allegory, the straight path, when they say, nature contains nature, nature rejoices in nature, nature dominates nature and is transformed into the other natures. Like draws near to like, for likeness is a cause of attraction. has philosophers who have transmitted to us a remarkable secret on this subject. Know that nature spreads rapidly in one's own body, whereas one cannot unite it with a foreign body. Thus, the soul quickly penetrates the body which belongs to it, but it is in vain that you would like to make it enter another body. The similarity is quite striking. The bodies in the work become spiritual, and reciprocally, the spirits become corporeal. The fixed bodies therefore become spiritual. Gold, like the elixir of red or white, has been taken beyond what is nature allowed. It is therefore not surprising that it is not miscible with molten metals when we are content to project it there. It would be impossible thus to transmute 1,000 parts for A. Also, I will deliver to you a large and rare secret. You have to mix a part of elixir with 1,000 of closest metal, enclose the whole in a vessel suitable for the operation, seal hermetically, and put in the furnace to fix. First heat slowly, gradually increase the heat for 3 days until perfect union. It is the work of 3 days. You can then begin again to project part of this product onto 1,000 next metals, and there will be transmutation. All you need for this is a day, an hour, a moment. Let us therefore praise our ever admirable God in eternity. Venus. The Mirror of Alchemy, R.Bacon.